on blast.
This Jimmy Butler saga that won't end, but just keeps getting better and better and better.
Like you love to say about Meek Mill. What does he say?
There's levels
There's
to this
levels
shit.
to
Yes.
this shit. Yeah, man.
There's levels to this shit. Meek Millie. Oh my goodness. I don't even know where to start, but I'll start here, okay? Woj, who we all know as the king of the NBA. So Woj started off in the morning tweeting off, after talks fell apart over the weekend, Miami still pursuing discussions with Minnesota on a Jimmy Butler trade. Butler has been in the T-Wolves locker room with teammates this morning before practice, but that doesn't necessarily mean he'll join them on the floor. I saw that tweet and walked into our morning meeting, and I was just like, guys, so Woj says Jimmy Butler's in the locker room. Like, what is happening?
Throwing rocks at people.
Yeah, it's like, what? So we know that they were close on making the trade with Miami, and then at the last second, something hit a snag, and the deal fell apart, right? So I guess now Jimmy Butler came up with this plan because what followed next in this sequence of tweets from Woj, stop me at any point, Webby, okay? Next tweet, Jimmy Butler practiced with the Timberwolves today, league sources tell ESPN. Next tweet from Woj, All-Star Jimmy Butler participated in Minnesota's practice, a session that included him verbally challenging teammates, coaches, and front office, league sources told ESPN. Butler was emotional at times, targeting Thibodeau, Layden, Towns, Wiggins. Story coming soon. At one point, this is another tweet, at one point in a scrimmage, sources said, Butler turned to GM Scott Layden and screamed, "You bleeping need me. You can't win without me," close quote. Butler left teammates and coaches largely speechless. He dominated the gym in every way. Jimmy is back. At this point, because there's more to this saga, but at this point, Webby, what were you thinking?
I was thinking that Jimmy is off his meds, and I just pictured him in like a gown, like a medical gown, out there playing scrimmage against the T-Wolves. No. The real thing that I thought was like the look on Wiggins and Towns' face when they were, like getting ready to practice, the doors swinging open and it's Jimmy, and they're just like, oh shit, I thought we were through with this guy.
Exactly, right? It's so crazy. And you mentioned Wiggins and Towns, and it wasn't that long ago. We discussed it on this podcast. You had Andrew Wiggins on Twitter talking about keep that same energy to Jimmy Butler, right? And like, that wasn't that long ago. So I can't even imagine what it would have been like to see him just in the locker room. And then, because we got all this stuff from Chris Haynes, right?
Yeah.
And Chris Haynes had a bunch of other details. And again, Webby, we did this one time before, right? Where we did like a 5-star rating, 5 being the highest. I'm going to read a bunch of tidbits from Chris Haynes here. You tell me where this ranks on the scale of 1 to 5, okay? 5 being the highest, okay?
Okay.
Here's the first tidbit. Quote, I ain't never seen some shit like that. Jimbo showed out. Close quote. One of Minnesota's players told Yahoo Sports. Okay.
That's strong 5.
Second tidbit. Butler showed up to practice late and just subbed himself into the scrimmage on the third team to go against the starting group.
5.
League sources said.
5. Strong 5. Third team.
Now,
third
hold
team.
on.
It's my favorite.
Who's on the third team?
Oh.
Like, I don't know who are the dudes that are on the third team.
End of the bench for the Timberwolves? I have no idea.
That's amazing.
What do they play on NBA on TNT? What is it?
Oh, who he played
Who he
for?
played
Yes.
for? Yeah.
Well played. Next tidbit. Screaming from the top of his lungs, Butler uttered taunts at his teammates such as, "They ain't shit," and "they soft," league sources said.
Easy 5. Easy 5.
All right, next one. At one point, Butler found himself guarding Towns in the post, and when the big man received the entry pass, Butler yelled, quote, "He can't do shit against me," and Towns ended up kicking the ball out, league sources said.
5. And it's that last bit that really I love.
How does that happen?
He wasn't ready for it. He wasn't ready for the
Dude
smoke.
is yelling, "These guys are soft." Dude's yelling all this stuff. Towns, you get the ball. You got to go at him. Even if you miss, you got to like old school ball him and like bully ball him. No?
Please tell me you've got do you have another tweet in
Oh,
there?
I'm still going. Don't worry.
Okay.
I'm still coming.
There's one that's my favorite.
So neither Towns nor Wiggins confronted Butler at any point, right? When practice concluded, Butler stormed out of the facility without stretching with the rest of his teammates. However, before he departed, Wiggins gave him a hand dap.
Nah, it's two. It's two.
What happened to keep that same energy?
Mad soft.
What?
Mad soft. Well, listen, he is Canadian. I'm sure he apologized.
True. He's a nice good old Canadian
good
boy,
Canadian
right?
boy, good Ontario boy.
And then Towns huddled up the players with a message centered on everyone keeping their emotions in check, league sources said. But according to some of the players, the message was empty.
Oh, so I want to be there for it. It's so great. Just that moment in itself, that's my favorite. It's that after all this shit goes down, Jimmy Butler, crazier than a shithouse rat, coming in there, just going, basically having, I don't know, like what kind of performance you put this up with. You know, it's like Kanye at the Pablo tour. You know, it's just like he's just absolutely insane. And then you try, like, anybody. Can anybody, like, save this team, bring it together? Towns just tries and it falls flat. It's so great.
It's so great on so many levels. As you said, there's levels to this shit, right? And then, so as we piece the story together, we figure out that this was really a master plan by Jimmy Butler and his camp, right?
And we call it a publicity stunt where I come from.
Exactly. He wanted to get traded. Things stalled. So now he's going to make a scene. He calls up Rachel Nichols, which, shout out to Rachel Nichols, by the way.
Who is, like, not quietly, like, noisily becoming, like, the premier NBA journalist.
Oh, no. She's a champ of the NBA.
Absolutely.
Like, LeBron needs something, he calls Rachel Nichols. Like, whoever it is, you call Rachel Nichols. Rachel Nichols is a champ of the NBA. That goes without saying, right? So he calls up Rachel Nichols, basically tells her, hey, you probably want to come to Minnesota. I'm ready to talk. Let's do an interview tomorrow. So then he sets all this up, shows up to practice, knows that he's going to do this, hijacks the practice, then sits down with Mrs. Rachel Nichols to talk about it. And, like, now you know that's going to be splashed all over the internet, all over ESPN. It's all over all of the shows. And now you're basically, we talk about this all the time on the podcast, right, Webby? NBA players are the best at creating their own narratives. Jimmy Butler just created his own narrative, his own movie, his own, like, everything, right? Like, that was incredible. Did you catch much of the interview?
I caught just the parts that were just kind of...
the key parts.
Yeah, that were tweeted out. Very gifable moments from my boy Jimmy Butler. Now, while I agree completely with you, and I was talking about this with a couple of guys at work, this was completely premeditated.
For sure.
He knew what he was doing, and almost after you kind of see that interview and then go back and read those tweets, you can tell that Jimmy's kind of laying it on thick a little bit. I'm sure that he, a lot of histrionics, maybe, acting it up a bit. But honestly, man, I think that it's way deeper than that. There are levels to this shit. Sure, this is a great publicity stunt, but I think that Jimmy knows that the trade's not happening. I think he can read the writing on the wall. The second go around by Miami falling through, he sees that no team is going to trade for him right now. So you know what he's done? And these were my favorite tweets afterwards, were the other veteran players that weren't named that are saying, wow, he's got a lot of this team now behind him for what he came in and did, rather than slinking away.
Here's the thing, right? Like, he's coming in to try to prove a point. His whole thing is that Wiggins and Towns are soft. And he said so much in the interview with Rachel Nichols, right? Like, this is not hyperbole. I don't think I'm I'm going crazy connecting dots here. I think the narrative that Jimmy Butler is spinning here is that Wiggins and Towns are soft. And if they're really going to get to the next level, he's the one that makes them go, right? Because he's the one that's out there busting his ass. And again, shout out to our people that listen to us on the Ball on Blast podcast, because I'm pretty sure a couple podcasts ago, Webby, we were discussing the fact of the different upbringings of Jimmy Butler and Towns and Wiggins, right? Jimmy Butler's a guy that had to grind for every inch that he got in the game of basketball, to not being highly recruited in college, to being not a high pick in the NBA, whereas Towns and Wiggins, highly recruited, highly favored, both top picks in the NBA draft, right?
Exactly.
And that just comes with a different experience, right? So you're seeing all this now because there are some things he said in that Rachel Nichols interview where he said, I think, who's the most talented person on the team? It's Towns, right? Has the most like God given abilities? I think that's the term he used. He's like, that's Wiggs, right? But he's the one that Jimmy is the
Works
one
the
that makes it
hardest.
go.
Yeah, he said
He's not
no,
wrong. Like, is he wrong
no,
there?
no, no.
Do you know what I
He's
mean?
correct
Like,
on all 3 points.
well, those are the complaints we're hearing, right? Because even who was it? I think it was Shams, but someone had this nugget when Wiggins re-signed, and he had to get a verbal commitment. The owner, before he signed the contract, had to get a verbal commitment from Wiggins that he would commit to giving more effort.
That's some grade school shit. That's some middle school shit right there. It's like
That's
like that's the thing, and like this is why I'm totally on Jimmy Butler's side with this. It's like
yeah,
when you are like when you are almost in babysitting these kids. I mean, Towns and Wiggins can't be much older than 20, 21 years old. Like they haven't matured yet, and I understand being frustrated in that situation with those kinds of players. Like that's not Jimmy Butler's here to win basketball games, not to help these kids mature, right? And sure,
for sure.
honestly though, but it sounds like Jimmy wants to put that on his back. It doesn't sound like he wants to run away from this problem. And especially if he's not going to get traded. I mean, he put out the trade request. It fell through. And it seems to me like this was a little bit of him saying, well, this is my lot in life. This is what I've got to be doing. Ooh, that's going to be a touchdown.
Well, you're right? Like Wiggins is 23, Towns is 22. These guys are super young. And the other part to this, right, that I think a lot of people are missing is this is Jimmy Butler coming in and he's doing a huge dick swinging contest here, right? But he's coming in and he's saying, listen, you gave the money, like as your organization, you guys gave the money to these two kids and you don't want to give me the max money, but I'm the one that makes this actually go. Right. And I think that that's the part that people are missing as well. A lot of this, and yes, he's talking about he's not getting the super max from the team because they can't afford to obviously max out Wiggins, max out Towns, and give him the super max. That's not going to work. But he was quick to say that it's not even so much about the money, but the principle of, okay, you're going to make him take less, but these other two guys, you're going to max them out already. When again, Jimmy is clearly the one that makes this go.
Yeah, no.
I think that part can't be underlined enough, right?
You're absolutely right. Now, one more thing before, like we kind of move on or whatever. But the other great part about this story is the Mark Wahlberg thing.
So I saw the headline, but I didn't really click on the story. What is that? I saw that, like, the headline of Mark Wahlberg's to blame.
So I forget who it was, but there was somebody who's, like, close to Jimmy Butler's camp, and the idea was that that Jimmy Butler was a very down-to-earth, humble kind of cat for the first few years he was in the league. And then he started to get good, and he started to make more famous friends. And the one friend that he made before his ego started to get the best of him by this account was Mark Wahlberg. And this person was saying that as soon as Jimmy Butler met Mark Wahlberg and they became friends, Mark Wahlberg put something into his head, and Jimmy Butler was a different person.
What?
I know.
That is amazing.
It's so great. I mean,
that is wow.
And I've seen pictures with Jimmy Butler and Mark Wahlberg hanging out.
Yeah, that is incredible. Imagine if the demise of the Minnesota Timberwolves is because of Mark Wahlberg. That's incredible. But again, right as you think this story couldn't get any crazier, right? Where you have a star player basically coming in to diss the other team's stars to try to force a trade out of town. Today, Shams tweets out, Timberwolves All-Star Jimmy Butler called a players-only meeting today. Side note, today's news began with the Timberwolves canceling practice. Obviously, one would assume because they didn't want the media around and they didn't want to do any media today. So somehow Shams tweets out, Timberwolves All-Star Jimmy Butler called a players-only meeting today, airing his feelings towards the situation and management per league sources.
It's like Festivus.
Butler expressed to the players he would compete with them as signs pointing to him staying with the franchise into the regular season. To which Jeff Teague, yes, Jeff Teague, starting point guard of said Minnesota Timberwolves, goes to Twitter and ats Shams and says, "It wasn't no players only meeting. You just made that up, bro. Y'all gotta relax with this fake news."
Too good.
Webby, there's nothing better than the sarcastic bro.
Yeah, it's true. It's very true.
When you're calling someone bro sarcastically, there's nothing better than that. I love the NBA so much. That is incredible.
Good one, bro.
On blast.